Anthony, Principal Vinod Kumar, faculty and students of Rajagiri College, friends, I hope that covers everybody. Wonderful to see you all here this morning. I was very touched and flattered by the very kind words of introduction by Father Anthony, by our talented young MC, by the principal. You know, when you come to address a new audience, you often wonder how you're going to be introduced. And to be very honest, these days, the great danger is that people look you up on the internet. And they say all sorts of things about you that you may not actually have done. So I was quite relieved with all the kind words. But I know that kind words must always be taken with a pinch of salt. Because nobody, when they introduce someone, says this person is actually not very good and he's not very useful and he hasn't accomplished all that much. They always make you sound better than you actually are. In fact, one engineering college I know, a friend of mine there on the faculty, used to introduce people not only by looking them up on the internet, but by looking up the deeds and misdeeds of parents and uncles and grandparents and so on, up the family tree. And he found, this was in New York, he found that one speaker he was about to introduce had an uncle who had been electrocuted at Sing Sing prison for kidnapping and armed robbery or something equally horrible. But having taken the trouble to look this up, he felt he had to use it. And of course, you have to be polite. So he said, you know, our speaker had an uncle who occupied the chair of applied electricity in one of the nation's leading institutions. So you see, these introductions should always be taken with some moderation. But thank you so much, I'm truly honored. It's wonderful to be here. It's been a couple of years since Rajagiri has been asking me to come and address the students, and I'm relieved that the Emerging Kerala Conference finally gave me an opportunity to come to Cochin, and I was able to put aside a little bit of time from this morning's program to come and see you all. I think that Abhiyanthriki sounds like a wonderful idea, and I'm very proud to have been invited by you to inaugurate it. What can I tell you? I have sort of good news and bad news. The good news is it's going to be a short speech, because I really don't believe in very, very long lectures. In fact, I tend to follow the principle followed by the English king, Henry VIII, you know. He used to say to his wives, I shall not keep you long. He got rid of 6 wives that way. So the same way I shall say to my audiences, I shall not keep you long. But if that's the good news, what's the bad news? The bad news is the rest of the time belongs to you. Because I really want to have an interaction with you all. I'd like to respond to your comments and questions on anything that may come to your mind, whether I have mentioned the topic or not. So that at least for 15-20 minutes, I can really feel what's on the minds of young people in Rajagiri, and you can get whatever benefit my responses might give you. So what shall I turn to in my own remarks? I was told that the young people here would like some pointers as they go ahead in life. And I must say that one of the things that always alarms me and interests me about engineers is that you're dealing in a world of great complications, and at the same time, your job is to find simple solutions. I was amused to see in the program for Abhiyanthriki that you have a contest called Contraption, and that one of the objectives of that contest is to find the most complicated possible solutions to the most complicated ways of finding the simplest solution. That is a very interesting contest. I always thought that in our country, our politicians and bureaucrats have already won that prize. The simplest thing that they can somehow manage to make incredibly complicated, and that is apparently what you're going to try and win. We used to turn on a switch. He said, no. 50,000 rupees for knowing where the switch was, no charge for turning it on. Because ultimately, your knowledge as an engineer is in the ways in which things work and how things should work. Actually doing it is actually the least significant part of your expertise in education. And as engineers, the ability therefore to study in your college and understand the mechanics of these contraptions, to use your word in the contest, is extremely important. That's what ultimately you're going to pass your examinations for. But at the other end, you're dealing with non-engineers in the real world. It's delivering a simple solution that makes your contribution constructive for everyone else. A second thought about engineering that I have to share with you, and I'll stop telling these silly stories if no one's enjoying them, but it was another one of my favorite stories about engineering. It's a story about a young engineering college graduate student, all his engineering textbooks in his hand, who's walking by a pond and suddenly hears a voice saying, "Kiss me, kiss me." So he's shocked, there's no human being around, he looks around, but there is this voice, so he looks down again, he finds a frog right on the edge of the pond saying, "Kiss me." So he bends down, sees his frog, picks up the frog, and the frog says, "Kiss me and I'll turn into a beautiful princess." So the engineer looks at the frog, thinks again for a minute, and the frog says, "Kiss me and I'll turn into a beautiful princess." The engineer puts the frog into his pocket and keeps walking. The frog's cries are getting more plaintive. "Help, kiss me, kiss me." So after he keeps walking and this frog is keeping on screaming from the pocket, he takes the frog out. And he says, "Look, I'm an engineering student. I don't have time for a girlfriend, but a talking frog is cool." So the fact about engineering students is, yes, they don't have time, they have lots of work to do, lots of studies to do, but it's also true that the story implies something else, that engineering students can sometimes be very single-minded, very focused, very oriented towards one specific thing to the exclusion of others. And the fact is, this is not a good thing. Because life is about more than engineering, life is about more than studies, life is about more than examinations. One must be able to expand one's imagination to embrace the world, to embrace so much else that exists around us. You know, there was a startling study done by Oxford University about 3 or 4 years ago. I wrote about it in my column in the Times of India. That established that an astonishingly large percentage of the modern world's terrorists are actually trained engineers. Osama bin Laden was an engineer. Many of the people who worked in Al-Qaeda were engineers. The Lashkar-e-Taiba, full of engineers. And they wondered, these Oxford University scholars, why is it that so many engineers became terrorists? And one of the arguments given, and perhaps the most persuasive one, is that engineers deal in a world of black and white. This is how it works, it doesn't work any other way. It works like this, you get this result. If it doesn't work like this, you don't get the result. Think that way. Now, the real world is not the world of engineers. Engineering applies, and its rules and regulations, as Father Anthony was saying, are very important in everything we do in engineering. But once you go outside, the black and white can often shade into grey. There can be great realms of uncertainty, great realms that need compromise and cooperation. Black and white doesn't work. But these, Osama bin Laden and people like that, for them what happened was, they looked at the world through the mental lens that engineering had given them. And they said also everything is either good and bad, everything is either black or white, it's either this way or no other way. And once they had settled upon their certitudes, in their case it was Islamic fanaticism, some other terrorists may have some other belief. Once they had come to that conclusion, for them that was the only truth possible, everyone else was wrong, and therefore killing them meant nothing because they were simply wrong and could be discarded. That kind of mentality is considered the great danger. And I would urge you all, as engineers, and particularly let me say this to the young male engineers here, once in a while, you should kiss that frog. It is important to realize that the world offers other possibilities, other ways of doing things. A third point I wanted to make was very strongly echoing what Father Anthony said, when he said that participation in Abhiyanthriki is what it's all about, that only 3 of you will get first, second and third prize, but the rest must be involved in the spirit of it. That is such an important lesson for all of you in college. Because the real truth is, and I'm saying this as somebody who's lived a lot longer than all of you and probably than most of your parents, the real truth is that in life you must sometimes be prepared to accept failure.